Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today we're talking about the one-page strategic plan because your strategic plan, it should be simple. So I'm bringing on an expert that can really help you boil it down to one page to keep you productive and just to get your results. So without further ado, let me bring on my amazing guest, Laura Posey. Welcome to the show, Laura. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Terrell. Love being here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, we're going to dive into the one-page strategic plan, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how did you even get to where you are in business now?
Yeah, so sort of cut my teeth in the business world in sales. I owned an insurance agency, and then I was a regional manager for the insurance company. And then I decided I'm really not good at working in large corporations. So I went out on my own with a business partner doing sales training because that's what I knew how to do, right? And I ran into a big problem in my own business in that I hated doing sales training. I hated my business partner. I hated all the overhead that we had put together. Like I hated everything. I hated my personal life too. So I kind of ran away to Sedona, Arizona, and had a bit of a kind of a life-threatening encounter there. And it really just, sometimes you have that moment where just the clarity comes, and I realized that the problem with my business was that I hadn't started out with a plan for what I wanted to build. I just sort of took what I knew how to do and decided, oh, I'm going to make a business out of this. And so I sat down and really created a plan for like, okay, what did I really want to have? And then backing into, okay, what do I have to do now to get there? And since then, I've just never looked back. It worked so well for my business that I started doing it for my clients' businesses. And I realized it's really the only thing that I really love doing with clients. And so I stopped doing all the sales and marketing work that I was doing, and the only lane I flow in right now is the one-page planning.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, it's so interesting, how relatable that story is to so many business owners where it's like they just jumped in and just started.
That's what we do. We're entrepreneurs, right?
And I always find, even for myself, it's just, that difference between just diving into something and at least just having some kind of framework,
Yeah.
it seems like it makes a world of a difference.
Well, I mean, you think about all of the really important things in your life. You spend time planning, right? If you get married, you plan your wedding,
Mhm.
right? You think about, oh, what's it going to be like? Where are we going to live? All this stuff. You're going to go buy a house. You think about like, oh, what kind of house do I want to buy? Where do I want to live? Right? You go on vacation. You spend time planning your vacation. So why wouldn't you spend time planning the thing that is going to provide the money, not only for those things, but for the rest of your life? Right? But we don't do it.
Mhm. No, that is a really good point because I mean, as you were saying that, I was thinking about that. Like, and what if you wanted to have a wedding and you just say, we're not going to plan anything. We're just going to show up the day of. We're going to invite a bunch of people and we're just going to show up.
Right. Like it's not going to work very well. You're going to get there and go, wait a minute, can anybody actually marry us? Anybody here, a pastor, a reverend, like, did anybody bring some food? Right. Anybody got a little Bluetooth speaker so we could have some music and dance? It would just be chaos. And like, I mean, as
Wow.
an entrepreneur, I mean, your business, like it is the fuel for the rest of your life. Like it's all your money.
Mhm.
Right. And
Wow.
and so it's going to pay for your housing and your family and your kids' college, and like it's going to, and your vacations and your wedding. It's going to pay for everything. So why not spend a little time figuring out what the hell you want to do, right? And how you're going to do it.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. And I mean, can you take us back to, like I said, that moment that you had when you were, when you realized that you didn't have a plan? I guess when you realized that, were you beating yourself up like, man, Laura, you should have known better? Or how did you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, I did. I sat down and I had, in this hike that I had gone on, I had gotten into trouble because I didn't have a plan for the hike that I was going to do. I was in a place I'd never been, and I'm like, well, I've been hiking before. Like, there's a trail. Like, I'll figure it out, right? And in that moment where I realized, like, the whole reason things went sideways on the hike was because I didn't have a map. I didn't have a plan for what I was going to do, and it hit me that the same thing had happened with my business, and I beat myself up a little bit, and I thought, like, this is just kind of how I do everything, right? I
Mhm.
just sort of plow into it, and I was like, oh, I'll just figure it out. And um and so when I hit that point, then I started thinking, like, okay, well, I mean, is this something that just I failed to do, that everybody else does, that I just not get the memo? And I started doing some research and realized that the vast majority of small business owners don't have a plan for their business. They really, most of them are coming from some sort of corporate job where they knew how to do something. And now they're going into a new business, and unless they're buying a franchise, right, that should have a plan for them, or, unless they're going into something, like they were an accountant and they're just going to go start their own accounting firm, right? So they're doing exactly the same thing. Most people just dive into it and they just go, wow, I did it before and was successful. Now I'm going to be even more successful doing it for myself because I don't have all
It's
these
fun.
people holding me back.
It's funny that you say that when you mentioned about accounting, because I mean, my firm is an accounting firm, and one of the things that I did a lot before I left my full-time job was I actually met with other accountants and other fractional CFOs in my city, and just sat down or called them and talked to them for about 30 minutes to an hour, just asking them, hey, what was that transition like? What were some
Yeah.
of the challenges? And one of the funny things that I noticed is most of them didn't have a plan either. They were just like, hey, you
I'm
know,
going to talk to people and magically I'll have clients.
because that was one of the I'd say consistent themes that I saw was most of them were saying they had an issue attracting clients, and so I was like, okay, so what are you doing about networking? And they were like, well, I'm not really doing it. Like, oh, okay.
I'm sitting in my office hoping somebody will call me.
And I'm just like, yeah, basic plan probably would have helped them out a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge thing that goes into your plan is, like, what are you going to sell and how are you going to sell it?
Mhm.
Um, it's different than a business plan, right? A business plan is that thing you take to the bank so they'll give you some money.
Gotcha.
Um, and it doesn't have to have any bearing on reality. It's just the thing that the bank wants to see to give you some money. But your strategic plan is like, what is your strategy for making money?
Yeah.
Right? What are you going to sell? How much are you going to sell? Who are you going to sell it to? And how are you going to get them to buy it from you?
Mhm.
And what do you have to do in your life to make that happen? And then how are you going to fulfill all of the promises that you made when you took somebody's check? And for most people, that's the easy part, right? They know what they're going to do to keep the client happy, and they know how they're going to deliver their services. They just can't put it together in a way to bring people into the company. It's the number one
Mhm.
problem. I've done tons and tons and tons of deep dive surveys. I've got thousands of responses from folks.
Mhm.
And the number one challenge is lead generation and getting a consistent flow of clients.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I can definitely see that because in talking to, I haven't worked with as many companies as you have. I mean, I was reading up on some of your profile where you've worked with over 2,800 clients. I mean, from solopreneurs to Fortune 100. So,
Yeah.
and I haven't talked to that many, but in the 200 or so that I have talked to, I've heard that as a common thing, like getting a good flow of
Yeah.
leads and clients is a huge struggle for people.
It is. And most people go about it in a very haphazard way, right? The people who sell sales and marketing programs are really good at sales and marketing. And they make it sound like, oh, this is the hottest thing and anybody can do it. And it's easy and it's simple and it won't take any time. And magically, clients are just going to be lining up at your door to give you huge piles of money. And I mean, here's the truth. Their systems and their programs do work. Do they work as fast and easy as they say they are? Usually not. Right? You really have to dig down and put a lot of time and effort into it. But most of them have a plan. It's a step by step for here's how you do the thing. The challenge that I see with a lot of clients is that they're not choosing a plan for getting new clients that really is in alignment with what they like to do and how they like to do things. So
Mhm.
somebody will say like, oh, well, you need to run Facebook ads and have a chat bot and people are like, oh, I'm going to do that. I love Facebook. What they don't realize is that they love the front end of Facebook, but they don't love the back end of Facebook, right? They don't want to have to figure out the algorithms and Facebook advertising is hugely complicated. And it takes a lot of time and error and trial and people the people that sell the Facebook advertising programs don't tell you all of that stuff. They make it sound like, oh, you like Facebook, this will be easy. Or they'll say, oh, you should do a podcast. And then they realize like, oh, they're like, I love talking to people. And they don't realize like all the back end stuff that has to be done and how complicated it is to really not just produce the podcast,
Mhm.
but then to actually generate clients from it.
Yeah.
So, it's absolutely possible. All of those programs work. You can absolutely make money with a podcast. You can make money with Facebook ads. You can make money with all of these things, but you have to have a plan for how it's going to fit into your overall life and how it's
Mhm.
going to fit into your personality and what it is that you like to do. If you don't like
Mhm.
technology, Facebook's ads is not your thing. If you don't like technology, doing a podcast is not your thing, right? Like, there are lots of other ways you could make money, and so don't choose the ones that don't fit for you.
And I think that's a really good point because it's something that I've had conversations with different people about. Like when they see the podcast, they're like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And it's like, at a high level, I can tell you the major things that you need to do. But underneath every one of those major things, there are some fundamental things like people are like, oh, I want to start a podcast and I want to invite other, like my prospective clients to come on. And I'm like, well, when you start your podcast, I want you to be honest. Like when I started reaching out and asking people to come onto the show, I think like in the early days, I was sending like 60 messages a day and maybe getting 5 people to say yes. It's just
Yeah,
like, no one told me that up front.
right. Yeah, it starting anything is a lot of work, right? Starting a new fitness routine, a lot of work. Having a kid, starting a new life, a lot of work. Moving your house, a lot of work. Like it's and I it bothers me that so many people say, "Oh, it's easy, anybody can do it." It's like, no, no, not everybody can because
Mhm.
it's not suited for everybody, and that's okay. But for every entrepreneur, there is a path,
Mhm.
right? There is a success path. There is a sales and marketing program or way of building their business that makes sense for them.
Mhm.
And the challenge is to figure out like what is it that you do really want? What do you really like to do? And find those things that fit with you and do those things and do them religiously and do them relentlessly and ignore all of the other stuff. One of the reasons that I force people to plan on a single sheet of paper is because it really does force you to decide what is important enough to go on this sheet of paper. What are the highest value activities? What are the things that you really care about that are really meaningful for you? And what is all the crap that's just a nice to do? And if it's not on the plan, you don't do it.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
yeah, and it's just such a powerful way of looking at everything. It's a bit of the 80/20 lens.
Mhm. Now, I guess as you start to walk people through that, because one of the things that I think, or this is my hypothesis, you don't have to agree with this one.
Bring it
But
on.
one of the things that I've noticed even in myself was when I started actually working in my business, what I realized is I was like, you know what? I really did not know how to really make decisions to where, there were so all these different, or let me say, I didn't know how to really focus. That's what it was.
Hmm.
To where when I was working in my corporate job, there was all this stuff going on. And then when I came in my business, I'm like running around. I'm just like, you know what? Do I even really know how to focus on what matters?
Right.
And I'm curious is if you've seen other business owners have that same challenge.
Yeah. So lack of focus is actually the number three thing. It's the number three obstacle that business owners struggle with. And some of it has to do with the way our entrepreneurial brains are wired, right? We're wired differently than the rest of the world. We have what we call an opportunity seeking mindset. So we're always looking for new and better and faster ways to do stuff, right?
Mhm.
We're always looking for that better mousetrap. Another way of looking at that is it's shiny object syndrome,
Gotcha.
right? And so we are wired not to focus very well. And it's part of what helped us start our businesses, right? We saw this opportunity to go out on our own and do something really cool, but it's so great for starting a business, not so great for running a business.
Mhm.
And so that lack of focus is a big deal, and it, it I like that you said you had trouble making decisions because the root of the word decide means to cut out or cut away.
Mhm.
And when you cut out or cut away all of the non-essential things and you're left with just a few things, it's much easier to focus on just those few things. If you leave all that clutter in front of you and you leave all of those opportunities open, then it's impossible to focus. Your brain is constantly just searching for like, what should I be doing now? And so narrowing things down to that single sheet of paper really enhances your ability to focus.
Mhm.
Um, and focus, like so many things, is it operates like a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, I absolutely love it. So, now that people are excited about a one-page strategic plan, where
Yeah.
can people get in touch with you? How can they find
Yeah.
you online?
Yeah. So company is called Simple Success Plans. So you can visit us at simplesuccessplans.com. And if you want to get a sense of what one page planning is like, we have big annual plans that we do on one sheet of paper with folks. And I want to give your folks, we'll give a little smaller bite of things. I'd like to give them the daily success checklist, which is a one-page daily plan for what do you do before work, what do you do during work, and what do you do after work, um,
Gotcha.
to really create a holistic, really good day.
Okay. Nice, nice, nice. Now, when someone's looking and they're saying like, "Hey, you know what? I'm kind of all over the place. I really need to kind of figure things out." What does that look like when they're working with you?
Yeah.
Do they reach out? Is there some type of assessment you do, or do they go into like one of your boot camp or programs?
Mhm. Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways that folks engage with us. Sometimes people, particularly entrepreneurs, have that do-it-yourself spirit. So they're
Mhm.
like, "Can I just do an on-demand online course?" Absolutely. So we have our
Gotcha.
on-demand online courses available. Some folks say, "Look, I just want you to do it with me. I just want you to hold my hand." And so a couple of times a year, we do 2-day boot camps where we get on live with everybody and we train a little bit, and then they do some work on the call, and we train a little bit, do some work, answer questions. And at the end of that 2 days, the plan is completely done. And then at the beginning of every year, every January, we do a 6-week masterclass version of our planning process because most people want to do their planning at the beginning of the year. And we spread it out over 6 weeks, so it's a couple hours a week, and it gives folks time to really do a super deep dive. And we map out not just the next year, but we actually map out 3 years.
Okay, nice, nice.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up your website to give people a little bit of a taste because there's something there that I saw that I really want to. So, can you tell us a little bit about the freebie section here? What can people expect there?
Yeah, so in the freebie section, we've got all kinds of resources that are downloads, things that people can use, and also lots of recommendations. People are always asking us, well, what kind of software should I use? Or what should I do? How should I use this? What can I do there? And so we have our business tools list, we have our procrastination cure kit, and there you can also see the daily success checklist. So folks can grab any of those things from there.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Well, before we wrap up the interview, one of the things that I always like to ask every guest that comes on is me, and,
Yep.
and you've given us so much insight. So this is going to be really good. Is, when you think about your journey and the things that you've learned, what's two
Mhm.
final pieces of wisdom that you would reiterate or new things that you would share with the audience?
I think the first thing that I, I I mean, I've talked about it a bunch, but it really is sitting down and getting clear about what you want your business to look like. And before doing that, get clear about what kind of lifestyle you want. Like, how much money is it really going to take to have all the things that you really want? And not that, I mean, like if you want 4 Lamborghinis, fine. But if that's not really what you want, get clear about what you really want, figure out how much that's going to cost, and then you design your business around what you want your lifestyle to really look like. So that's the first piece, right? Like, don't forget the personal. It all starts with your lifestyle, and that informs what the business is going to look like and how big it needs to be, et cetera. The second thing that I think is massively important is to have some sort of a coach or mentor or someone who can be your sounding board, but also be your accountability. So we always talk about there's sort of 3 pieces to success. There's the skill set, there's the knowing what to do, there's the mindset, the getting out of your own way and being able to do it, and there's the accountability. It's having someone who is your better self when you're not your best self, right? Who's going to keep you on track and make sure that you're continually moving forward and help point you to resources if you're stuck someplace. And I resisted that for years. And I have now, just we say around here, coaches need coaches. Um, like you've got to have somebody who's kicking your ass.
I love it. I love it. Well, Laura, thank you so much for being an amazing guest, for coming on the show, sharing your insight and your wisdom. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me, Terrell. It was great to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.